When you stop reaching out, something powerful begins to happen beneath the surface, something that words could never achieve. At first, your silence feels unfamiliar to her. She's used to your energy, your presence, your consistent effort. She's used to you reaching out, checking in, and showing that she's on your mind. When that rhythm suddenly stops, her mind starts to wonder. She may try to convince herself that it doesn't matter, that she's fine without hearing from you. But deep down, the quiet starts to echo. It becomes the mirror that forces her to look at what she had and what she might have lost. In the beginning, she might interpret your silence as disinterest or even as a game. But as the days pass and you remain still, something begins to shift. She starts to question the assumptions she once made about your availability. You see, silence has a language of its own. It speaks of emotional control, of confidence, of a man who doesn't need validation to feel secure. And that's when the space you've created begins to work for you. It becomes a stage where she starts replaying old moments, conversations louder, the energy you once shared. The absence of your voice begins to create contrast, and contrast breeds clarity. What most men don't understand is that silence isn't weakness, it's strength disguised as patience. When you stop reaching out, you're not abandoning the connection, you're allowing it to breathe. You're stepping back to observe what's real and what's dependent on your constant effort. You're saying, without words, I know my worth, and I don't chase what's not reciprocated. That level of detachment commands respect. Even from someone who may have taken your attention for granted, it's in your stillness that she starts to feel your true presence. The more time passes, the more she starts to reflect. She begins to think about how she felt when she was with you versus how she feels now. Maybe she thought she had options. Maybe she thought you'd always be there no matter how she acted. But your silence disrupts that certainty. It creates a space that demands accountability, not through confrontation, but through emotional contrast. She begins to realize that your attention had value, that your consistency was not guaranteed, and that the energy you gave was unique. This reflection doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow realization that builds with every unanswered thought she has of you. And that's the beauty of silence. It allows truth to rise to the surface naturally without force. You're no longer explaining your worth, you're embodying it. You're no longer trying to prove anything. You've already shown it by walking in quiet strength. So when you stop reaching out, remember, it's not about manipulation or control. It's about awareness. You're teaching through absence what your presence once provided. You're giving her the gift of perspective. And in that space, she starts to see what she never did when you were always available. Sometimes the loudest statement you'll ever make is made in complete silence. When you stop reaching out, the first thing that begins to consume her mind is the question, why? That single thought starts to replay in different forms. Why did he stop texting? Why isn't he checking in? Why doesn't he seem to care anymore? At first, she may pretend it doesn't bother her. She may act unbothered, post confidently, or distract herself with attention from others. But beneath that mask, her curiosity begins to grow. And the more your silence continues, the more powerful that curiosity becomes. It's not because she misses constant communication, it's because she misses certainty. You took that certainty away the moment you stopped reaching out. You see, when you were the one always initiating, she never had to question her position in your life. She knew your energy would always find its way back to her. She could be distant, moody, or even cold, knowing you'd eventually check in. But when that pattern broke, it disrupted her emotional rhythm. Silence introduces doubt, and doubt leads to introspection. Suddenly, she starts thinking about what she said, how she acted, and whether she pushed too far. She begins to wonder if she made a mistake, if she overestimated how much she mattered to you. And that's where the power of distance begins to work in your favor. The truth is, people often don't think deeply when everything feels predictable. They start reflecting only when something changes. Your silence is that change. It's a mirror showing her that your world doesn't revolve around her anymore. That absence forces her to see what your presence once gave her: comfort, consistency, and connection. And now that it's gone, she feels the emptiness it left behind. Every unanswered question becomes a reminder that she no longer has access to you the way she used to. It's not that your silence is designed to make her suffer, it's that it helps her see what's real. You're not playing games, you're simply removing yourself from a situation that no longer honored your energy. And in that absence, her mind fills in the blanks with imagination, emotion, and regret. That's why silence is often louder than words. It leaves space for her own thoughts to echo. She starts thinking about you not because you said something, but because you didn't. And when her thoughts circle back to you again and again, that's when she realizes something powerful. You were different. You weren't chasing validation. You weren't desperate for attention. And you weren't trying to force connection. You had the strength to walk away quietly. And that calm indifference unsettles her. It makes her think deeper than she ever did when you were the one reaching out. So when you stop contacting her, understand this. It's not about punishing her. It's about allowing reality to reveal itself. Your silence plants seeds of reflection, and her own thoughts water them over time. What she once overlooked now begins to matter. What she once doubted now becomes clear. And all of it starts with one simple truth. You stopped reaching out and she started thinking. When you stop reaching out, she doesn't always react right away. In fact, her first instinct is often to wait. She tells herself he'll come back. He always does. It's a quiet test, one she might not even realize she's running. She's checking to see whether you'll break your silence first, whether your emotions are still as predictable as they used to be. That waiting period is her attempt to measure your strength without saying a single word. And that's exactly where your silence starts to separate you from every man who couldn't hold his ground. You see, when a woman tests your silence, she's testing your emotional control. She's not just observing what you do, she's watching how long you can stay composed. In the past, you might have been quick to text her back to check in to fix whatever felt off. But now you've shifted. You've learned that chasing after someone who doesn't match your energy only drains your value. Your quiet composure says something words never could. I'm not the same man you used to know. And when you stay silent long enough, that message becomes clear without a single text being sent. The moment she realizes that your silence is not a strategy but a lifestyle shift, her thoughts begin to change. She starts to question whether you've lost interest or if you've finally learned to outgrow what once held you back. That's when curiosity starts to turn into unease. Because the truth is, when someone is used to your attention and that attention suddenly disappears, it's not just your absence they feel, it's the loss of control. She no longer knows how to read you, how to predict you, or how to trigger a reaction. That unpredictability begins to stir something deep inside her, something that feels a lot like regret. This is where most men fail. They break their silence too soon, not realizing that the silence itself is what creates attraction. It builds tension. It reminds her of what your presence meant. But the moment you reach out first, that tension collapses and she regains her sense of power. The key is to remain steady, to understand that silence is not about withholding affection, but about showing emotional strength. It's about saying, I don't chase validation. I attract respect. As time passes, she starts to feel your absence differently. What used to be a quiet test now feels like uncertainty. She might post something online, drop subtle hints, or try to get your attention indirectly. But your calmness becomes your answer. You don't need to prove anything because silence is already doing the talking. It's showing her that you are focused, grounded, and emotionally in control. So when she tests your silence, let her wonder, let her think, let her feel what it's like not to have immediate access to your energy. Because the truth is, she's not just testing your patience, she's testing your growth. And when you pass that test, you shift the entire dynamic without ever having to say a word. When you go silent and stay consistent with it, something deeper starts happening in her mind. She begins comparing you to everyone else around her. It's human nature to compare, especially when someone stands out. The moment you stop reaching out, your calm detachment becomes the standard against which she measures every other man who tries to get her attention. While others might be chasing, texting nonstop, or trying too hard to impress, you're doing the opposite. You're quiet, composed, and focused on yourself. And that contrast doesn't just make her notice you again, it makes her question everything she thought she understood about you. She begins to realize that your silence isn't just an absence, it's a reflection of strength. Every man she encounters after you feels a little different. They might give her attention, but it doesn't hit the same way. They might compliment her, but it doesn't carry weight. Because what she once got from you wasn't just attention, it was energy, groundedness, and emotional stability. You gave her something that came from confidence, not neediness. So when you step back and stop chasing, she's left to experience the contrast between your calmness and everyone else's chaos. What really gets into her mind isn't your silence, it's what your silence represents. It shows her that you have control over your emotions, that you're not easily shaken, and that you understand your value. It makes her realize that you're not like the rest, the ones who get reactive, insecure, or desperate for validation. Instead, you're operating from self-awareness, not scarcity, and that difference speaks louder than any message you could send. As she starts comparing, she also begins remembering. She recalls the moments when your presence brought calm instead of confusion. She starts missing the way you carried yourself, the way you didn't force anything, the way you stood firm when others would fold. Your silence becomes the reminder that you were someone who didn't need to chase to be valuable. It's not arrogance, it's composure. It's knowing that if someone truly values you, they will meet you halfway, not make you chase endlessly. That comparison slowly begins to make her question her own decisions. She starts thinking about how she might have taken your attention for granted, how she misread your consistency as weakness, and how she confused your care for neediness. But now, your silence reframes that image completely. Now, she sees that your quiet was never a lack of interest. It was a reflection of your self-respect. That's when your absence begins to carry weight. You no longer have to prove anything. You've already made your statement through your stillness. Every other man's effort only amplifies what she's missing from you: a sense of balance, a sense of peace, a sense of confidence. And the more she compares, the more she realizes that what she thought was ordinary was actually rare. That's the power of contrast. You don't chase, you don't explain. You simply live in alignment with your worth. And when you do, she begins to see that silence doesn't mean disinterest. It means self-mastery. As the silence strays on something starts to shift her emotionally, she begins to miss the energy you once brought in her life. At first, she might not even realize it. She might brush it off, convince herself that she's fine, that she doesn't need you. But emotions are powerful teachers, and the longer your silence continues, the more she starts to feel the absence of what you gave her. It's not just your words or your presence she misses, it's the energy behind them. The calm assurance you carried, the confidence in your tone, the steadiness that made her feel grounded. That energy becomes the thing she starts to crave again. Even if she doesn't want to admit it, you see, people don't miss the noise, they miss the peace that came with it. You weren't just another person in her life, you were a source of emotional balance. When she was with you, she felt something real, something rare. You didn't chase, you didn't beg, you didn't lose control. You carried yourself like someone who knew his value, and that created an energy she could feel even when words weren't spoken. When that kind of presence disappears, it creates a void, and silence has a way of amplifying that void louder than anything else. Over time, her mind starts to wander back to the little things. The moments when your words brought her clarity, the way your calm energy steadied her emotions, or how you always seemed unshaken even when things got difficult. That kind of consistency doesn't fade easily. It lingers in memory because it was real. Your silence starts to remind her of how different things felt when you were around. It's no longer about missing messages or phone calls, it's about missing the emotional connection that came from your strength. This is where many men fail to understand the power of energy. It's not about constant communication or chasing attention. It's about the impact your presence leaves behind when you're no longer there. A man who operates from calm confidence leaves an emotional imprint that doesn't fade quickly. That's what your silence allows her to feel again. The contrast between what you provided and what she now experiences without it. And the deeper she feels that contrast, the more she realizes how much value your presence carried. When she starts missing that energy, it's not just nostalgia, it's awareness. She begins to understand that what you gave wasn't something she could easily replace. Other people might offer attention, but not presence. They might give affection, but not strength. Your silence becomes a reminder that your energy wasn't random. It was a reflection of a man who knows himself. And when a woman realizes that kind of strength is gone, she feels the loss in ways that touch her deeper than words ever could. So as the quiet stretches on, remember this: what she misses most isn't just you, it's the man you became while learning to stay silent. That's the kind of energy that can't be ignored, replaced, or forgotten. When you choose silence, you're not just creating distance, you're redefining the entire dynamic between you and her. In the beginning, she might think your silence is temporary, a reaction to emotion, or an attempt to gain her attention. But as time goes on and she sees your consistency, she begins to understand that this isn't a phase, it's who you are now. You've evolved. You're no longer the man who reacts, chases, or needs validation to feel secure. You've reached a place where peace means more than proving a point, and that realization begins to shift the balance of power in ways she never expected. She starts to see that your silence carries a message. It tells her that you're not waiting for her to decide how the story goes. You're the one deciding now. Your silence isn't about avoidance, it's about clarity. It's a boundary without words, a quiet declaration that says, I'm not engaging unless it adds peace to my life. And that kind of energy can't be ignored. It makes her reflect deeply because it's rare to meet someone who doesn't operate from emotion, who doesn't need to speak to be understood. Your silence becomes the loudest expression of self-respect. What's powerful about this stage is that it's no longer about a reaction, it's about your transformation. Through your silence, you've learned that real strength doesn't come from convincing someone of your worth. It comes from walking away with confidence, trusting that what's meant for you won't need to be forced. This new version of you doesn't negotiate your value, you embody it. And when you carry that energy, the dynamic changes forever. She can feel it. She sees that you're no longer emotionally dependent on her response. You've detached in a way that brings both power and peace. When she finally realizes that you're not playing games, that you've genuinely grown into someone who values self-control over attention, it creates a deep emotional shift. She might reach out, curious to see if the door is still open. She might test the waters, expecting the same version of you she once knew. But she quickly discovers that silence has changed you. You no longer respond from a place of need. You respond, if at all, from a place of purpose. That difference makes all the difference. You've reclaimed your emotional power, and now she has to earn the right to experience your energy again. And that's when everything resets. You're not the man she used to take for granted. You're the man who showed her, without saying a word, that you will no longer settle for less than mutual respect, effort, and peace. The silence that once confused her now defines you. You've proven that silence isn't emptiness, it's strength. It's awareness, it's evolution. In the end, your silence doesn't just make her miss you, it reminds her who you become. And once you reach that level of control, you don't chase anymore. You attract what's meant for you effortlessly.